I was just finishing my residency at Hopkins, and about that time, Don Price and his colleagues, Joe Coyle and Malin DeLong, had found, and Peter Whitehouse had found, that a certain group of neurons in the base of the brain were selectively lost in Alzheimer's disease. And I was just really interested in that whole idea because here clearly these are the cholinergic neurons. This was clearly a signal that probably one should pay attention to those cells, how they live and how they die. Very close to that time, I went to the Society for Neuroscience meeting, and I heard what for me was a really surprising finding, that the growth factor that I'd worked on in my Ph.D. acted on those neurons, or might act on those neurons. It turns out right after my residency, I was in the Army. I owed them back for 3 years. And I said, that's what I'm working on. The idea was, could we, using trophic factors, rescue or restore those neurons that were being lost? And I'd say that what I've done since that time, my whole career, has been about understanding how do growth factors signal, how do they fail to signal normally in Alzheimer's disease, and how could we reverse those changes? I think the possibility very much exists that if we can understand how they signal and what goes wrong, we could prevent Alzheimer's disease, actually. In the US, we have for many years, because of the NIH, had the most outstanding scientific enterprise in the world. US science has driven many of the advances, I would say most. US scientists have really received a lion's share of Nobel Prizes. What we've done in the US since the 1950s is to build a scientific edifice second to none, the best in the world ever. And what I'm really worried about in the current climate is, do we lose that? And it's not so much that we don't have as much money as we had before, but what I'm concerned about is all the momentum toward a future without Alzheimer's disease, all the young people that are training to contribute to that future, and all the accelerated progress that we hope to have is compromised. So it's a problem not just for the scientists, it's a problem for the country. Each of us knows somebody with Alzheimer's disease. Each of us knows the tragedy that brings to these families. We don't want to see that anymore, and in good science, we have a chance to prevent it forever. But we have to keep funding it. We have to keep remembering that our goal is not for us to be happy and publish papers, but to make sure that people don't suffer. And we need a robust investment in science to keep that going, and I'm very concerned right now that that's being compromised. I want the donors to know that they've made all the difference. That without them, we're not where we are in Alzheimer's disease research. And without them, we're not anywhere near a cure than we would be 10 years ago. In other words, what they've done by funding really good science is they've accelerated progress toward understanding and treating Alzheimer's disease, and for that I'm very, very grateful.